All is striving after wind. No, we say, well, yeah, that's him, but that's not me. Christians, let me ask you, do you have multiple TVs, surround sound? You've already got slaves in your house entertaining you. If you got 700 channels, you've got central heating. Well, how about somebody to cook your food? You got microwave. How about somebody to cool your rooms? You got air conditioning and heat pumps. So how about somebody? I want to brag on myself. Monday, I did the washing. Glenda was hurt. I'll do it. What does doing the washing mean for you? Oh, I threw the clothes in the washer. The washer washed it. Then I threw them in the dryer. I really didn't do anything. Groceries and the world's goods are delivered to your door at the touch of your internet fingertips. You have 2 and 3 vehicles. We can see alien worlds explored by rovers. Your iPhone, I got mine here. Your iPhone, seriously, I did the research on this, has 100,000 times more processing power than the computer that landed the man on the moon 50 years ago with Apollo 11 guidance computer. Now, does the stuff make you happy? Solomon says, not really. The happiness doesn't come from the stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just so everybody knows, we finally gave up on trying to get the live stream to go on Facebook. I moved it over to a YouTube account. I posted that in the Monroe Valley Facebook group into my personal page in case you've got people asking you how to get on and they're not sure how to. So there's a link there. But obviously everybody who's here right now is already in the group, but we try to get it live streamed that way. But it is interesting that the comments about testing pleasure come right after statements that wisdom brings sorrow. Jordan made that comment. I think it's true that we have more wisdom about ways to enjoy ourselves than I think any other era, right? I mean, you've listed, Paul, all of these different reasons that we have stuff that nobody else does. And yet that's just simply taught us more than anybody else that it doesn't work. It's just a short-term fix. As Leila pointed out, whatever happiness you gain from stuff is fleeting. It's not bad in and of itself, but it's just a quick hit of fun, and fun is different than joy.
Yes.
Yeah. So as he gets down to the bottom of that, in about verse 10, he says, all that my eyes desired, I did not refuse them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart was pleased because of all my labor, and this was my reward for all my labor. So there is, in verse 10, there is a pleasure from it, right? He said, whatever I wanted to do, I did, and I did get a reward for it. Thus I considered all my activities which my hands had done, and the labor which I had exerted, and behold, all was vanity and striving after wind, and there was no profit under the sun. So that's an interesting word that comes up an awful lot, is that word, there's no profit. Profit is what you get at the end of a thing that's above and beyond the effort you put in, right? So you run a business, and then there was your time and your effort and the supplies and materials you had to purchase, and then you sell a product, and then whatever that percentage is off the top, maybe it's 1%, maybe it's 200%, that's your profit. Solomon said after all of his building and doing and gathering, there wasn't any. It was rewarding in the moment, but in and of itself, it didn't get him any closer to the goal of what life was really about. And I find that fascinating, that somebody who, you have a billionaire, they're no closer to the goal of finding out what life is all about than the guy who has $2 to his name. Yeah. So Paul, looking at our list of things to go over, what if we move to verse 20? Well, let's start verse 18. I hated all the fruit of my labor for which I had labored under the sun, for I must leave it to the man who will come after me. That kind of begins a section on dealing with the tasks that we do and the cost thereof. one of the things I think that we sometimes forget is that there is a cost to work, right? I mean, we think if I build this thing, if I do this thing, if I work my job and I earn more money, we think about what we're getting, but we don't often always think about the cost of it, right? I mean, is that a fair point to make?
Absolutely. Luke 14:28, calculate the cost. You could do it, but the cost is.
Yeah, exactly. As somebody put down in the comments, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? So there is I guess in the business world, they call it a cost benefit analysis, right? You'd have to make this analysis of, if I work more hours at my job, those are hours that I don't have with my family. Is that worth it? Sometimes the answer is yes, because maybe you're saving for a family vacation or something, and everybody's kind of agreed and on board. But there's also a point where you say, no, I'm throwing in the hours, but I'm not getting anything out of
return.
it.
Here's an interesting insight. Author, Raphael Badziag, spent 6 years, interviewed 21 billionaires to write his book, The $1 Billion Secret. You ready, folks? I mean, you need to get your seatbelt on for this. He found only 1% of the billionaires are happier than the average man. 99% are as happy as you are, or much less. And the 1% that was happier, he says, has nothing to do with money. You say, well, what did it have to do with? It had to do with choices and strong relationships. It's not about money. The money, whether you win it through Powerball, blah, blah, Grandpa Jones willed it to you, you earned it. The money only makes the attitude more evident. It doesn't change the attitude.
Yeah. And here, as he's talking about labor, one of the things that he points out is that everything you work for will eventually, you're going to leave it behind, and you're going to leave it to somebody else. And that may be a blessing to them, or it may be a curse.
Yes.
I mean, we see it a lot of times with professional athletes. You have a guy who's 18, 19 years old, and all of a sudden he's making $2 million a game. And you say, well, how is that in terms of helping his life? Well, a lot of those guys, they just implode. The money is the worst thing to ever happen to them. They were happy playing basketball or football or soccer or whatever it was, but then all of a sudden you added money and it ruined everything. So sometimes the acquiring of wealth, it's not going to profit you as much as you think it will, as you pointed out, but it may even go so far as to be a curse to those you leave behind. And I doubt there's any of us that think, when I die, I want to leave all my children with a curse. It could happen that way.
The comment, if I work for others rather than myself, that's really the key.
Yeah.
The key is, if I am trying to get I, me, my, you're never happy. If you say, oh man, God, you're so great and I can help others and I'm building and encouraging and blessing and wow, they're doing tremendous. That's the joy in life. Yeah. Let me give you a little personal insight. I gained, I guess when I was younger than you are now, Scott, but not by much. I was somewhere in my early 30s, mid 30s, something. Are you mid 30s? Where are you at, Scott?
I thank you for saying that. I'm late 30s. I'm 39.
Okay. And so a couple of you would know, a great friend of mine was Albert C. He's died since. And I got in my 30s and I was always, I liked what I was doing, but it was never enough. And seriously, I wanted to climb Mount Rainier, but it wasn't enough. And I wanted to do that, and it wasn't enough. And well, I like preaching, but maybe I need to be a bush pilot in Alaska. Maybe I need to be a rancher in Australia. Whatever I was doing, I always wanted to do more, to accomplish more. I asked Albert C. And at the same time, the stuff I had been doing that I used to enjoy at that time, salmon fishing, skiing, that I liked, was kind of, It wasn't really a midlife crisis. I said, Albert, but I feel like I'm dying. What's the deal? He said this great thing. I want to share it with you. He had this kind of Southern accent, and I'll move a little closer. He said, Paul, I have done about everything there is to do, And what I hadn't done, I've been accused of doing. But I find only one thing brings me real happiness, is doing for others. And there it is. There it is. I wanted to, hey, is my enjoyment from what I do? Oh, wait a minute, that only lasts so much.
Right.
The joy is, what can I do to bless God and honor him and encourage others and cheer on their successes? Then it's, oh, wow, that never ends. That is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, as we look at the book, one of the things that Ecclesiastes is so great about it is, I view it as common sense. You could come to the same conclusion Solomon did just by living your life and paying attention. Yeah. Most of us don't want to learn it the hard way, so that we have to go all the way through our life to get to the answers. And so God has blessed us with Ecclesiastes, so you don't have to wait to the end of your life to have it all figured out. But when you talk to people who are, they're at the stage of life where they count their life in years and months, not decades left. You know, they think, I don't know how much time I have left, but it's not much. Their interest in doing new things is pretty minimal. Do you want to go travel? Not so much anymore. Do you want to go get some new thing? Yeah. You want to go try that new restaurant? Yeah. The interest seems to wane. And I know I'm kind of talking in generalization, but it seems that it wanes in general towards newness. But I don't see there being a lot of waning in the desire to help other people. That's right. That doesn't seem to diminish as you age in good people, which tends to be a sign that maybe you've hooked into something. Hey, that's a good point there. You know, that's something of value. And I think that's what your friend was telling me there. Man, I've done everything, but most of it, but when I help others, it does something.
Scott, why don't you tell us some, in verse 24 and 25, I like to think about it as the first major conclusion. Tell us a little bit about that.
So verse 24 and 25, there is nothing better for a man, and we might mention that phrase of there's nothing better than shows up a lot, right? But there's nothing better for a man than to eat and drink and tell himself that his labor is good. This also I've seen that it is from the hand of God, for who can eat and who can have enjoyment without him? And so there, like you said, it's a major conclusion there that, several different pieces to it. One, you're not going to have enjoyment without God. So he's already alluding to the final conclusion of Ecclesiastes, that to fear God and keep his commandments is the whole of man. So you're not going to enjoy anything, not really, without him in as a piece of that process. And then also, eat, drink, and tell yourself that your labor is good. I think it's interesting that you're commanded to tell yourself your labor is good. So say, look, I did the best I could, and that's enough. It's almost like what we tell kids when they walk off the field from a Little League game, right? We tell them, hey, did you play your hardest? Did you have fun? So who cares about the score at the end? If you gave it your all and you left it on the field, it's good. And that's what we tell our kids. And then we become adults and we kind of forget some of that stuff. And it's like, we got to go back to everything I need to know in life I learned in kindergarten. There's a little bit of that there, that just tell yourself, look, did you get up this morning and work hard? Did you, whatever it was you were doing, did you try your best? And then were you in the moment when you had a meal with your family? Did you eat and drink and enjoy that time with them? Or were you distracted? I'll tell you, I'm super guilty of that one, of thinking about the next thing. There's nothing like parenting to make you realize your own faults. Because when I'm starting to tell my kids, hey, look, don't worry about what we're going to do next. Just like be here right now and enjoy this thing. And then I'm doing that same thing myself. So it's like, don't do that. Eat and drink, enjoy that, and tell yourself that your labor is good. And if God's in the mix with that, that's huge. Leanna asked the question, do you think that there's an implication that we need to do good labor so we can honestly say to ourselves our labor is good? Like, don't be lazy. Yeah, I do think so. I do think that that's part of it. I think if your labor is going out and ruining people's lives, if you're a gossip and a busybody and that's what you labor about, then you can't at the end of the day tell yourself, wow, I did a really good thing. But if you, I mean, if it's honest work, I guess that'd be the way I would put it. If it's honest work, if your job is you're the guy who picks up trash on the side of the highway, but you do it every day, the highway's a cleaner place for you. Tell yourself, I did something good with my day.
That's right. There's a number of scriptures, class in your homes you might like, mean a lot to me. Because what happens, we beat ourselves, that didn't go very good, and this and down, and that guy's doing better, and blah, 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 or somebody's criticizing you. He says, tell yourself your labor is good. What I'm doing, I gave it the best I got. It didn't turn out the best, but I gave it the best I had. Think about Nehemiah 8:10. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Proverbs 15:13. And by the way, here's a little trick on writing down scriptures. Forget about what the thing says if you're having trouble writing it all down. Just get the numbers. You can go back and find out what it says later. Proverbs 15:13, a joyful heart makes a cheerful face. You have a great attitude. People see it in you. If you're kind of crummy weather, and people see that. Proverbs 17:22, a joyful heart is good medicine. Really having that positive attitude really does not only increase your endorphins, but strengthens your immune system. And so lack of sleep and frustration and worry depress it. In our days, having a strong immune system is a big deal with COVID-19. Romans 8:28, all things work together for good. One last story I want to plug in here. Those of you that worship with me for a long time would know the story. Years ago, I was preaching in Jamaica, and I was told, you need to meet Sister B. Maybe her name was Beatrice. She lives up in the mountains, and so we went there and lived in a little one-room shack. And I mean, just forget about carpets and sheetrock and all this stuff. I mean, it's a wood frame. You walk up the steps, that's it. And how it worked for her, there's no running water. Her grown son had to carry a 5-gallon pail every day on his shoulder, a mile up the hill on an 8-inch goat trail every day so she would have water. There was light. She had one light bulb. She lived in this little house. It was her and her grown daughter. There was a sheet across this one room. On the one side is where they slept, and the other side is where your kitchen table is and such as that. Well, forget about, well, you mean the sink and the cupboards? No, there aren't. I mean, you got a table and chairs. And the reason I mention that is her attitude. And I say, Sister B, how do you do this? And the beautiful Jamaican accent, I won't represent it very well. She said, well, I have the arthritis. And no medicine at all. There's no medicine. I mean, not even aspirin. She said, and sometimes it hurt so bad, I almost cry. But I no cry because that would bring me down. I went, oh, Paul, what a wimp you are. I mean, I get a headache. Hey, give me some Tylenol or whatever. No money. She had no work, no medicine, no running water, and still joyous. Yeah. Tell yourself your labor is good. It's the gift of God.
Well, and it highlights, because I think we've all seen and met people who have circumstances outwardly that are harder than ours. Yeah. And it highlights each one of those people in our life, highlights that the external is not the answer. It's not like if you got a better job, if your health was better, if you had more money in the bank, if whatever it is, whatever the external thing is, you had more muscles, you had 25 hours in the day, it really wouldn't change anything. you'd probably just be more of who you are already.
Yes.
And so it is, it's kind of fundamental to the heart of Ecclesiastes is the external things cannot be the thing that defines who we are. Right. And one of the things that I want to put this properly, that I'm really enjoying about what's going on in the country right now. There's a lot of things not to enjoy. So I don't want to make it sound like, oh, this is great, I'm glad we have a pandemic. No, I'm not. But there are good things that come out of bad things. And one of the things that I am seeing is that there are a lot of people who are very strong Christians, and it's proving itself because the external things that would make it easier to seem like a Christian are gone. And so people are having to work really hard to study their Bibles and gather with other Christians in whatever capacity possible. And people are doing it. I mean, I'm really impressed with the strength of the Lord's people in all of this. And that's not something you see when the external things are good. That actually doesn't show up until the external things go bad. So sometimes the bad actually is good for the inner man. I don't really like that principle. I'd kind of like it to be the other way, but it does seem to be true that trials and tribulation sometimes can be the most important times in your life. We tend to find that they're the defining moments, at least, of who we are. I know, Paul and I up front, I should probably just tell everybody, we didn't know exactly how much of Ecclesiastes we were going to get through. And so we just kind of said, if it takes 3 classes, 4 classes, whatever, we're fine. And so here, we're not going to try and get beyond chapter 2 for tonight. We've got 1 minute left. I could just tell you chapter 3 is about this and we could move on. But I think stopping at chapter 2 is a good place to do it. Paul, do you have any final thoughts through these
let's look at verse 25 and 26.
Perfect.
I summarize it by saying God's the answer. Mm-hmm. God giveth to a man who is good in his sight wisdom, knowledge, and joy. My final comment on this, my family life, we loved each other, but it was absolute chaos. I wanted a different kind of life as a late teen. Nobody had it. Not my family, not my friends, not my friend's family. One Christian that I met in high school demonstrated it to me. And God gave it. And we are what we are because he is who he is. God bless.
Well, I'm not going to add anything to what Paul said because that's perfect. What I am going to do is make a couple of final plugs for things because we have some questions in the chat and whatnot as we close out. One, somebody asked a question about what will Monroe's live stream be on Sunday. The plan is for basically the same. So we're going to try and put it up on Facebook Live. We're probably going to, because of the problems that we've had tonight with live streaming, we'll try and also make sure that we've got a secondary live stream source. So we've kind of covered our bases with that. I'll get information out with that as we progress, but we will be doing it. The other thing that I want to make a plug for is a good friend of mine. He used to, Ken will have the streaming handled. A good friend of mine who is now preaching down in Oregon, Sam Bray, he's putting together a time on Sunday evening for everybody to just stop and pray together. And the goal is not to do it digitally or everything together, but just to remind Christians that praying makes a difference. And if all of us are taking time on a Sunday evening, frankly, most of us would have normally been in services, but we don't have that option right now, but we could all bow our heads in prayer. That's a really cool thing that he's doing. You can look and see on my personal Facebook page, you can see more information about that if you're interested. Sunday will be 10 a.m. Just like last week, you will be able to sign on a few minutes early for the live stream there as well. And so it will be up and running. We'll try and have it running a few minutes early so that people will have time to get logged in and viewing the live stream. Paul, did you have any other things that you think people should know with what's going on right now? Just kind of random announcements.
Probably the thing that strikes me is almost everybody has the same challenge. And so we want to worship. We're dealing with something really deadly because it's new, and you're trying not to kill your brothers and sisters. So that social distancing really has merit. And we'll get a handle on this, and we'll be wiser, stronger, and better. But in the meantime, use wisdom, show love, be all you can be. Love you.
Perfect. Love everybody. So thankful for everybody who came and joined us tonight, and then also just kind of put up with some of the technical difficulties. We're doing our best to work through those as they come up, but there's a bit of a learning curve. So we plan on doing this exact same thing again next week. We'll put details out as that progresses, but with that, we'll sign out. Yeah, thanks everybody. Have a nice evening.